Alright, so question one says, would you please explain the soft locking system in detail? For example, how does it interact with dodge? Does it apply to melee attacks or just range? During missile travel time, is it possible for another target to intervene between you and an existing soft lock target to take the attack? Their reply was, you must be facing your target to hit it. However, soft locking allows you to pick a target out of a crowd to hit. It is possible that your target would or sorry, it is possible that your target could be behind another target. You would hit the target you had soft lock provided you were aiming at them. Another target could not step in the way of the soft lock target to prevent you from hitting your soft lock target. That's a lot of soft lock targets. As for dodging, the target can execute a roll dodge or evasion move to avoid the attack. I mean, that's common sense. I mean, it makes sense. What's your guys' input on that?
I mean, to me, the soft lock target reminds me of just honestly kind of the system that you have in Skyrim, in the sense that, you know, whatever you attack last, you can just see their health bar for a little while. Or it's just like a focus system that you have in other MMOs. Just something that you can just pay attention to the battlefield and see what's going on, more or less, rather than something like in WoW or SWTOR, Guild Wars, where what you have targeted is what you're hitting, even if you're at a slightly odd angle or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, what do you think, Gooey?
I'm not sure how I feel about it. I understand how it fits. I understand that that's something that, like you said, it matches the Skyrim system, where you don't have you just don't have a set target. It's whoever you need to attack at that point, whoever's in front of you. I will say that I don't know how that would work. I mean, I can see how it would work if you're doing mostly AoE spells for healing, but outside of that, that would be fairly hard to do, especially if you have to keep an eye on a tank. And yeah.
Well, I mean, I know we're going to talk about healing stuff later, so hopefully that'll help cover that, because, I mean, I think healing in any kind of MMO that is guaranteed to use the Holy Trinity is the first thing that comes to question when you're dealing about a aiming-based system rather than an actual hard target-based system, where instead of selecting somebody that you're attacking or healing or anything like that, you're more aiming your character towards it. So I know we're going to touch on that a little more later, but I mean, healing is definitely a big question in that sense.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Matt, before I kind of knock out one of the misconceptions on the soft locking?
Well, my idea of it is it's somewhat of a cross between what like WoW's hard locking and a soft locking slash focus system that the others have described. I believe you can tab target onto them, and as long as your reticle's over them, you'll hit them basically no matter what, unless of course they dodge roll. But if you're aiming at something else, then you're going to hit whatever else you're aiming at.
Exactly. You kind of explained two things. About a month and a half ago, there goes my squeaky chair. About a month and a half ago, they released information explaining that there is tab targeting and explaining how it's going to work. And in this one, they called it soft locking. Soft locking is essentially tab targeting. You can tab target to pretty much anything within vicinity. But think of it this way. If there's 3 mobs in front of you, but there's the healer behind them, you can actually target the healer and hit that healer as long as you are aiming at them with your reticule. But if you have the healer targeted and some guy's creeping up behind you, you can still spin around, attack him, and not get that most annoying message in the center of your screen saying, you must be facing your target. So it is essentially just a assist target option. I mean, you don't have to do it. It just helps you focus your target, exactly like everybody said. Do you guys have any other inputs on that question?
Well, with the implication of soft lock targeting, where if you're going to hit them through someone else, if someone else is in front of them, that gives me the idea that there might not be missile travel time for arrows or fireballs or whatever, but then it also reminds me that they can dodge roll, so there must be travel time. So they simply move out of the way just by sidestepping and dodge it that way, or do they have to dodge?
That's an interesting question. Because I mean, if I was originally thinking it's going to be very similar to a first-person shooter, where as long as your reticle is on them when you hit the button, it would hit them. But then you take into account how are you going to dodge that attack, whereas with a first-person shooter, you don't have that preemptive warning. You don't see it. You don't hear it, right? So you don't have that option to double tap WASD. What do you guys think? What do you think, Gooey?
Come back to me.
All right.
I'm still thinking about it.
I mean, I think there definitely will be travel time. I mean, this is something that I know I've talked about a lot in a lot of our previous episodes. I mean, I think there will definitely be travel time. I think when you try to compare travel time to, I'm going to use mainly Oblivion here as an example because that's the best comparison. I think we're going to have a much quicker travel time because, I mean, projectiles in that game were just tard slow, and they were too easy to dodge. But I think when they say dodge, I think it's going to be a very sidestep ordeal. I think it's just going to be, your simple strafe, which is going to be interesting to see how much that plagues range players. Will there be guarantee hit moves? Is it only going to be your basic attack that's dodgeable in that sense? I think that's the big question there, but I think it will be just a sidestepping strafing. I think there will be travel time, and I think it's going to be dodged just in that sense.
Now, you say travel time. When you say travel time, does that increase your concern about heat-seeking missiles?
No, I mean, as long as you're just talking about linear, straight projectiles that are not straying from their original path, then no, I mean, it'll go, I say, quick enough that you can still hit a target decently from a good range, but also slow enough that with enough attention, it's dodgeable. Does that make sense?
It does, but in the case of an archer, we'll say, because obviously they're going to be range, they're going to be shooting arrows. What kind of visual cue do you think you're going to see from an archer when he releases that arrow?
Well, from certain distances, you get much of a visual cue because you might not see him, but, I mean, from playing Skyrim and Oblivion and things like that, I know when an archer releases his arrow and when to put my shield up because I can see him draw back the bow, I can see him release the bow. So, yes, that may bring back some sort of arms argument again in some way, shape, or form as to what movement we'll see from our characters, but I hope we see absolutely everything because that is what makes active dodge and a very immersive gameplay work.
Yeah, I don't know where I stand on this now. Because when you think of active dodge, I mean, Guild Wars 2 was probably the first game to really push the active dodge. But the way theirs works is you actually have a visual cue on the ground for about 90% of the things you're going to be dodging. If not, you see the character, like a melee attack winding up, you can dodge out of that. But when you're standing, if you don't have that visual cue on the ground, say for example you're assaulting a keep and there's an archer on the top and he's just plucking you he's basically turning you into a pincushion. Where's the visual cue on that? Especially if he's single targeting you with a single arrow.
Well, in that sense, why do you need one? I mean, when you're talking about immersive gameplay and assaulting a keep, I mean, do you have eyes on the back of your head? Do you really need to do that? I mean, isn't that part of the sneakiness of being the archer on top of the keep? So I think that for something like that, if you want to see the visual cue, you got to watch the enemy. I mean, to me, that's just what active dodge is all about. You have to watch the enemy. You have to be your character in a sense. You aren't a second pair of eyes behind your character that's watching over him, telling him when to move because you know something that he doesn't know.
I agree with that. If they're going to be up on the keep wall shooting down at you, they're going to have the advantage of opportunity, and if you don't have the situational awareness to notice that they're shooting you, then That's your fault.
You deserve to die. Gooey, did you have anything to throw in there with your back to basics shirt?
You like that?
You had to
That
look
was the
to
event of my
double
church.
check
I
it.
just- What?
You had to look to double check it.
I was modeling it.
Oh, okay.
We got these for real cheap. I don't know. I agree a lot with what Glenn said. It's hard to imagine. I don't know why every time I talk I get a text message. It's only when I talk that I get a text message. It's hard to imagine an MMO with a system like that because of server lag, because of well, I guess lag covers that pretty good. But it's hard to imagine an active dodge like that because, I mean, obviously you have the travel time, but I mean, what if the server lags and it kind of lurches forward and you don't realize it? It's not anything you can control. It's almost hard to guarantee that you would. I don't know. That makes me a little bit uncomfortable. That if it wasn't like WoW, where it's like an instant type thing, that leaves way too much dependent on someone's internet connection in order for them to be. I don't want to say this.
Fluid.
Yeah, fluid.
And I agree with you there, but I mean, if WoW has showed us anything, you can make a game run very quick and smooth. You mix that in with, I used this description before, but let's say you were sniping somebody in Battlefield 1942 with a server with the max of 64 people. I mean, you're talking about in PvP, which is our main worry, having scenarios or whatever the exact word was of 200 people. Is that correct?
Well, we're gonna go with that. I'll explain that afterwards. But we'll just go with 200 people.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, it's more people, but I mean, you're talking about dedicated servers that are meant to handle this. I think it's completely doable. It's definitely some worry. It all depends on how fluid the game is, but it's definitely doable.
The only thing that I worry about with even with them having servers dedicated for it and having, I'm sure they'll have plenty of servers. Every time, I swear to goodness, it worries me that I'm just worried that it's going to be exploitable on client side. So I mean, you're always going to have those people that are looking for ways that they can exploit it, and if you can control your lag or something, if there's some way to compensate for your lag, and it gives you an extra time to react or anything like that or to dodge, then that's just going to make it's going to ruin the system.
Well, on that topic, you're gonna kind of hate what I'm gonna say.
Did they cut off all of our hands again?
Yes.
And our goats.
And there's no battle goats. They already said that, no battle goats. But in Dark Age of Camelot, when we would run an 8-man, there were some times where we would encounter. There were specific groups of 8-mans that did this, so we always knew when it happened. We'd look at their name and be like, "Oh, well, this explains this." But when we would encounter specific groups, the entire group would either not want to fight us and they would lag themselves out. So their lag character would keep running past us. We'd try to kill it, but technically they're not there. So that's them exactly doing what you said, controlling their lag, controlling the fight, essentially. So it is possible to control that lag. And the fact that you brought that up, again, just kind of basically brings that image back into my head.
Yeah, but you're talking about, I mean, time frames here. Dark Age Camelot, what year?
2002, 3?
Okay. And WoW came out in 2004, correct me if I'm wrong? And, I mean, WoW had its issues. Okay, so WoW had its issues when it first came out with delay and lag and things like that. I mean, we're in a different era of games, so yes, I'm not completely not worried, and SWTOR is the reason that I am definitely have some hesitation, because they still hate playing a caster with an extreme passion in that game. But it's doable.
01. Thank you. But on the topic of lag, you got to remember this is mega servers, so there is no east server, central server, west servers. I don't even think we really know where the server is going to be located. So I think everybody in this chat is all East Coast. Well, you're more East Coast. But you know what I mean. If we are all connecting to a West Coast server, we're obviously going to have higher ping than someone who's already on the West Coast. And same with someone who's coming from, I don't know, we'll use New Zealand, for example. Like, they're obviously going to have a lot higher ping than anybody that's on our side or on the West Coast. So how's that going to work? Like, that's another big concern we have to contend with.
How many times do you really think that the server farms are actually on those coasts, though? I mean, they just separate it out so that you're playing with people within your region. I mean, in Europe, that's different and things like that. But when you're talking about North America, including Canada, US, and all that, I can guarantee you that East Coast and West Coast servers are sitting in the same server farm, and they're most likely going to be on the East Coast. But that's just my opinion.
What do you think, Face?
Well, you brought up a good point I hadn't thought about. We don't really know where the servers are going to be located, and someone connecting from overseas or from New Zealand, like you said, they're going to have a lot more lag, and how they're going to compensate for that. What they may do is they may have servers planted across the US, and then they're all going to be on the same mega server anyway, so they might just have, say I'm on the East Coast, they might have me connecting to an East Coast server, which then feeds directly into the mega server, so that might be one way to combat it. But otherwise, I'm not too sure.
Like, I thought about that, and then someone in chat was probably, I'm going to give it like another 2 minutes, someone in chat's going to say, well, they're going to do campaigns, which is all fine and great, but they're still going to group you with either your friends list, your guild list, or by the questions you answer. And probably by the questions you answer, your time zone and area is going to take a little bit more effect. But in our guild, we have, I would say, close to 6 or 7 people from the Australia, New Zealand area that are going to get lumped in with us strictly because of the guild. I mean, are we going to be connecting to a New Zealand server? Are they going to be connecting to us? That's a concern I have right now because, I mean, this conversation is making me scared. What do you think, Glenn?
Sorry, I actually got distracted. Continue without for now.
Right.
Well, I have a quick point. I'm assuming they have multiple servers feeding into that one mega server, so maybe they found some way to feed you into a server close to you and then also have you feeding into the same quote-unquote server as people with your friends, even though they're on a different physical servers than what you are. I don't really know. I'm not too technical like that. Maybe they found a way.
I'll also pop in here as far as you're talking about campaigns and questions and phasing and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, here's the thing. How many people do you think are going to sign up? 500,000? You think they'll get their 1 million when it launches? We'll assume, let's say 5. We'll assume 500,000, even though I think it's definitely going to be higher than that. So 500,000 people, and your main play areas are, of course, your main countries. You're talking about very centralized Europe, you're talking about North America and Canada. There's some South America stuff going on, things like that. But your main player base is definitely very centralized as far as the internet's concerned. I mean, do you really think that, assuming a campaign is 200 people, do you really think that you're going to be teamed up with that many people that are around the world that much? I mean, I'm sure that is in their algorithm somewhere for location.